Chapter 66. Kara. I try not to let my nerves show as I step through the double doors. I've been waiting for a while. There's no chance that they have other pressing matters. They just want to make me nervous. It's been over an hour and they haven't let me talk to anyone. They took Blue away at the beginning of this, but he should be safe. He should have gone to the care center. I don't let myself think about any other possibilities. My shoes clack against the polished tile, the ornate, inlaid stone covered in a shiny lacquer that makes me want to tiptoe around it. I feel like my shoes are going to scuff the perfect polish. It's not important, I know that, but it doesn't stop the nauseous roll in my stomach and the sweat that breaks out on the back of my neck. The high desks of the committee sit in a half circle at the end of the room. The wide panel windows set behind them make it hard to look directly at them. I can only see silhouettes before it's too much and I have to look away. There's only 5 people on the committee, but that doesn't make it any less imposing. They're the most powerful people in this school. They control everything that happens within these walls. Stars, when did it get so hard to breathe? They all sit in silence, each one of them pulling papers in front of themselves, books and files stacked up on their desks. It's inane. The incident isn't a day old. There's no way there's a written report yet. I've never been given an infraction by the school, so all those files are for show. They've got nothing on me. I've been a model student. No reports, no infractions, no trouble. Until now, that is. The quiet sound of papers turning makes me want to fidget, but they're all watching me. All of them. But the imposing figure in the middle is the one being open about it. The one in the middle. The biggest desk. Sir, I believe there's been a I try to speak, but the dean cuts me off.
Don't sir me, boy. Do you understand how much trouble you're in? Can you comprehend the magnitude of the terrible position you've put us in?
He speaks with composure, but I'm not blind to the anger that lurks just below the surface. They've cultivated their little sanctum over decades, and I rush in, making a mess. I understand it doesn't endear me to them, but it isn't my fault. With all due respect, sir, I try to find the right words to diffuse the situation, but he just blows up in my face again.
I do suggest that you hold your tongue there, boy, or I might not be able to fully control myself, he roars.
A red tint spreads to his cheeks. I lock my eyes to a piece of inlaid marble, tracing its subtle curves with my eye. It's hard to distract myself from all the people watching me, but I know when to yield. I know how important it is for him to feel like he's winning. I don't mind surrendering. I don't mind a show of power if it will keep him away from more serious action. The silence extends for several more moments, and though I don't have the will to look up, I can hear the shifting of the committee around me.
Good. Excellent. The first good choice you've made since coming here.
He settles back into his seat, and I can just hear the sound of a quill scratching across paper. One of the other committee members, probably. Someone who actually bothers with record-keeping, even when it's a bullshit case. Sir? I try to keep my voice reserved, but apparently it's still too much for the moment.
No! You disrespect our customs, our traditions, with your every move, and you expect the good people of this institution to simply take it. I took a chance on you, Kara, a chance that you are starting to make me regret.
I have to hold back my flinch at the steel in his tone. He's the one who interviewed me. He had had his reservations about giving me the scholarship student position at the school, especially since I only had a record in this town for a couple of months at the time. He had taken a chance on me, and I promised him I wouldn't make him regret it. I didn't mean any disrespect. I say it quietly. Too quietly. Either he doesn't hear me, or he doesn't acknowledge it.
I was responsible for your induction into this school, and I will be damned if you make me question my judgment.
His eyes narrow, and I feel the need to curl away from his gaze. I didn't mean to cause any problems. Is it so wrong that I wanted to be able to cast safely with my familiar? I keep playing the scene over in my head. Nothing went wrong. It all went according to plan. Even with Professor Berg screaming at us, nothing went wrong. Blue kept his focus, and everything went off without a hitch. There's a twinge of pain in my fingers at the thought. Blue had gone too far with our first casting, but that only makes me more glad that we practiced. It's better to have problems go down in a controlled environment where there's nobody to rat on you. I can't even imagine how disastrous it would be if someone saw my magic in the control of my familiar. No doubt Berg would say he's out of control, would recommend he be taken away from me. I try not to reach for the illusion token hanging around my neck. I've been wearing it nearly all the time for the past couple of weeks. My hands are still pretty messed up from when we first tried to make this work. I tried to heal myself, but I'm not good with healing magic. Worse in recent years. But whatever happened to me seems to be resistant to the already limited effects. The numbing cream is enough. It helps quell the pain and stiffness. I just have to be careful with brushing up against things and keeping myself from touching anything. They've been healing on their own. It shouldn't be too much longer now before I regain full usage of my appendages. Blue doesn't even know. He's been so nervous about the whole incident that I didn't want to burden him with any other reason not to practice. When I told him there was nothing to worry about, it was like a weight had been taken off him. It didn't take much to get him back into practice, and soon all of the reluctance dropped away. It was worth the pain. I doubt he would have continued practicing with me if he thought he really hurt me. Luckily, when his concern dropped away, so did any desire to talk about it. It was like the whole incident had been pushed behind us. I don't even think he brought it up to his friends. Which might work in our favor now. Less history of dangerous behavior is always better. The woman at the furthest right desk clears her throat, jarring me back into reality as she stands up to address the committee. It takes me a second to recognize the woman as Professor Linnell, my herbology teacher. Since when was she on this committee? Personal judgments aside, you need to understand that this is a rather unprecedented turn of events. You went directly against the orders of your teacher and made a high-risk scenario that could have harmed your classmates or yourself. Her voice is just as stern as it usually is in the classroom, but it has none of the same heat as the headmaster. With all due respect, Professor, I would never endanger my peers. My familiar and I had been practicing this style of casting for a while now. We were only going to attempt to use it when we had deemed the process safe. I got Professor Berg to sign off on an in-class experiment for the casting. I try to keep the nervous quiver out of my voice, explaining in the slowest and most even tone I can manage at the moment. And that is the only reason that this disciplinary committee is hearing this case. If it were anything else, we would have grounds for immediate expulsion, she continues, speaking calmly even though her words make the whole world spin. I'm sorry for being rash, but we practiced and perfected this. I got permission from the teacher whose class it would be affecting, and I assumed that was all I needed to do. I'm sorry, but I truly didn't mean anything disruptive by it. I try to clarify while stopping myself from rambling too much, but she doesn't seem moved by my words. She doesn't even look up from her papers, simply flipping through the notebook as she continues speaking. We will take that into account as we review this case, along with the testimony of your familiar, and we will come to a decision about this. It takes me a second to process her words. You interviewed Blue? When did... A cold sense of dread washes over me. I've been waiting for over an hour. Of course they could pull one first-year student's familiar from the care center. Why did I think he was safe? Is he all right? I blurt. I know I shouldn't ask. I should play it cool, as though Blue's safety is a low-priority concern. But I can't manage that right now. They can do a hell of a lot more to Blue than they can to me, and I can't just stand here knowing that he could be in trouble. Mr. Couture, I would advise that... she starts, but I cut her off. Is Blue all right? I ask desperately, hoping that she'll answer me, or at least put some of my fears to rest.
Mr. Ktor, if you do not stand down and allow Professor Hare to speak, I will personally see to it that you cannot get into a trade school with your academic record,
the dean bellows, and I press my nails into my palms to stop the retort on my lips. I can't say it. I can't. Not when Blue is somewhere else and I have no confirmation on his status. He could be hurt. He could be somewhere off campus for all I know. The pain is worth it. It's what I deserve for not thinking of this sooner.
Your familiar is fine, Mr. Ktor. His story corroborates much of your own, but it is just a precaution we take.
Her gaze lingers for an uncomfortable moment before she abruptly draws away.
Though I still don't understand why we give so much credence to the words of the pets of these students.
I hear one of the other men on the left mutter. It doesn't provoke much of a response, and as such, it doesn't really concern me.
I have all I need for an incident investigation to start, if Kara would be so kind as to note an address to find him at.
Professor Linnell cedes, sitting down again in her high-backed chair, entirely dismissive of the situation in front of her.
Yes, ma'am. I can put down my address,
I mumble out, hopefully loud enough for all of them to hear.
Good. Then mark it down and get out.
The dean speaks through clenched teeth.
You're suspended for 5 days.
Ice settles in my chest, and I have to fight to make myself take in a breath. I'm offered a blank notepad page where I quickly scrawl my address. No one speaks. That same oppressive silence settles over the room, and as I pass the notebook back, I have to ask. Sir, where is my... I try to ask, but he cuts me off.
Listen! You are on thin ice, boy, he grinds out, the weight of his gaze far too intense for me to bear.
Sir! I try again, but he seems even less willing to hear out my questions.
No! Listen to me. You are nobody. From nowhere. You stormed into here trying to change things that ought not be changed. Get out while you still can. Do you hear me?
He speaks in the quiet, even tone that lets me know that I am truly fucked. Get out while you still can. The voice echoes like some terrible joke, over and over in my head. I don't have the strength to respond. I bow low and get the hell out of that room, collapsing against the first wall that can take my weight out of the direct eye line of those doors. It takes me a few minutes to catch my breath, to regain some clarity of mind. Once I've recovered, I go to Professor Linnell's office. It isn't much, but at least I know her. She wasn't ever truly kind to me or Blue, but she's the only one of the committee that I know. I have to ask where Blue is. The dean didn't let me ask, and I can't leave without him. It takes almost a half hour before she makes her way back to her office, and by then I am a vibrating pile of nerves once again. Professor! I nearly shout, jumping to my feet.
Mr. Ktor, I believe you were told to go home,
she responds curtly, but I try not to be discouraged. She's never been the warm and fuzzy kind of teacher. Professor, I can't leave without my familiar, and I was hoping I could ask where he might be after being interrogated. I don't mean it as harshly as I've made it sound, but I can't take back what's already been said. She regards me silently for a moment, simply looking me up and down before quirking her brow. We do have your address. We could have sent your familiar home to you at the end of the day. She looks at me like my concern is the oddest behavior that she's ever seen in her life. Well, this day took an unexpected turn. I know that Blue's probably a little nervous, maybe even worried about why he's been called into questioning, and I haven't been allowed to take him home yet. I wouldn't want to leave him in that flux. I try not to ramble, but the words just pour out of me until I force my mouth closed. Yes, I can lead you to your familiar. I have to run a little test, anyways. She motions for me to follow her down the hall. A test? I parrot back, not sure if I should be worried or relieved. Locke wants to ensure that your kitty isn't harboring some other genetic marker, something that might make him magic sensitive or able to function outside of his constitution class. She rolls her eyes, making clear what she thinks about the whole thing.
Oh,
I say, though I really don't understand. It must be obvious because she continues on as though I had asked. It's a simple blood test. Little prick on the finger and all is well. That's that's good, I say, relief in my voice. I wouldn't get ahead of yourself. I haven't seen the Dean that pissed in years. It's a real talent, kid. It's a talent I wish I didn't have, I mutter, but she seems to take it as a joke. Well, he can't do much. You had your files in order down to the letter, and nobody did get hurt, even if you were being reckless. The mirth in her voice is not wholly undeserved, but I wish she'd pretend to be a little more sensitive to the issue. She sticks her key into one of the doors and holds it open. It's a small room, more of a remodeled closet than anything. Blue's leashed to the wall, half curled into the corner facing the door. His ears perk up at our entrance, and when he sees me, his face lights up as well. Master! He calls for me, and I look over to Professor Linnell before unhooking the leash from his collar and wrapping him in a big hug. Blue, you're all right? I ask. He only nods into my chest, and I give myself a couple of seconds to comfort him before I force myself to move. Thank you so much, Professor. I'm so sorry to bother you, I apologize, gesturing for Blue to rise with me. Don't worry about it. She holds up a small sheet of ridged paper and a needle. I still need a drop of blood, though. Blue offers his hand and gives the couple of drops freely. It's odd. As harsh as Linnell has been with us in the past, she's oddly gentle with Blue. She shows him the needle and paper before anything happens and doesn't force him to hold out his hand. Hell, she even offers a bit of praise when the whole thing is over and done. Thank you, Professor, I offer as we make our way to leave the room. I hope we haven't caused too much trouble. I can't wait to get back to your class. Oh, he'll mark up your record as much as he can and force your participation in some activities to make a stink, but other than that, there isn't much he can do. She waves her hand dismissively, but I stop in my tracks. Force my... Has he already picked out my punishment? I can't help the question. I'm probably breaking some rule about when students in active investigations can ask about their punishments, but I'm too anxious to care at the moment. Well, in a way, yes. In addition to quals, you will be doing a little bit of extra credit. Oh, this sounds fun.